Take a quiet moment and step away from the noise in your mind. Breathe. Listen closely to what your intuition has been trying to tell you for a long time. There is a strong chance that in the last few days, or maybe even in the last few hours, you have felt a strange restlessness inside you. Maybe it came as pressure in your chest. Maybe it came as one sudden thought about a certain person for no clear reason. Maybe you felt that even with the distance, even with the silence, something deeper is still moving beneath the surface. It can feel like a conversation is happening without words, like something unseen is trying to reach you. This is not just your imagination. This is not only anxiety, and it is not a weak attempt to hold on to the past. It feels this way because energy is moving toward you. Nothing happens without meaning, and no real connection is ever empty. If you are here with this feeling right now, it is because some part of you has been looking for confirmation, a sign, a small piece of truth that says what you have been sensing is real. Your logical mind may try to push it away. It may tell you to stop hoping, to stop reading into things, to stop risking disappointment. But your deeper self knows something your mind cannot explain so easily. Your soul feels small signals before the world makes them obvious. It catches quiet shifts before words are spoken, and right now those signals are pointing to change. Something is opening, something is moving, something that once looked frozen is not frozen anymore. Stay with me, because what comes next matters more than you think. The road that brought you here has not been easy. You have lived through confusion, doubt, silence, and too many moments of asking yourself if it was finally time to let go. You wondered if your patience meant nothing. You wondered if the connection was only in your head. You wondered if your heart had been holding on to something that was already gone. That kind of weight is exhausting. It drains you slowly, especially when what you see in front of you looks like distance and absence, but what you felt was not meaningless. That quiet part of you that never fully closed the door was not weakness. It was not stubbornness. It was your inner guidance telling you that something here was still unfinished, that the story had not reached its true ending. What you are feeling now is the early stage of something starting to take shape in real life. Often before something major changes in the outer world, there is tension in the inner world first. It feels like still water right before a wave rises. That is where you are now. Something has shifted. Where there was only silence, there are now small openings, tiny cracks, enough for truth to start coming through. Your presence in this person's life has not disappeared. Even with the distance, even with the time apart, it has reached a point where it cannot be pushed aside anymore. And that is important, because you were not waiting on someone who never cared. You were not holding on to someone who forgot you and walked away without feeling anything. The truth is deeper than that, much deeper. And once you see that clearly, the whole meaning of this silence begins to change. While you were dealing with doubt, something else was happening on the other side of this connection. Quietly, deeply, out of sight. This person has been going through a change that very few people could see. It happened in the hidden places of the mind, where real emotional turning points begin. They are now feeling something they can no longer keep buried. The intensity you have been sensing is not random. It is growing because the resistance inside them is starting to break. The walls they built from fear, pride, confusion, or emotional control are getting weaker under the pressure of a truth they can no longer deny. This is not because of outside pressure. It is happening because truth always finds a way to rise. No matter how deeply someone hides it, truth keeps moving. And this connection was never something logic could fully explain. It runs deeper than that. It reaches a place that time and distance do not erase. To understand why this shift is happening now, you have to look at what silence has really been doing inside them. This is someone who has moved carefully, very carefully. Someone who kept space between you while still watching, still feeling, still being pulled back in ways they did not want to admit. They may have looked calm on the outside, maybe even in control. Maybe they acted like life was moving on as normal. They created a mask, not just for other people, but for themselves too. It helped them believe that stepping away was the right choice, the safe choice, the smart choice. But over time, that mask became too heavy. It stopped protecting them. Underneath it, there has been struggle, real struggle. And now it is getting harder for them to pretend it is not there. Keep listening, because this is where the story turns. Night after night, they have been fighting an inner battle that no one else really sees. They tried to explain the distance with logic. They told themselves the separation made sense. They called it wise. They called it necessary. Some of that came from pride, some came from fear, some came from a deep discomfort with feelings they did not know how to carry. Sometimes people step away not because they feel nothing, but because what they feel is too strong for them to handle. Being truly seen can shake a person. It can make them feel exposed. It can stir fear of losing control, fear of being hurt, fear of hurting someone else. But when two paths are meant to cross in a meaningful way, the mind can delay the connection, yet it cannot erase it forever. Slowly, their defenses began to weaken. Life without your presence started to feel flat, less alive, less real. They began to notice that the version of life they built without facing this truth was empty in ways they could no longer ignore. It felt like they were acting in a role that no longer fit them. Every time they tried to move forward and create more distance, something kept pulling them back. Not something visible, not something easy to explain, but strong enough to return their thoughts to you again and again. This is not only about missing someone, it is deeper than that. It is challenging the way they see themselves. It is becoming a turning point, almost an awakening. They may have tried to drown it out with noise, distractions, other people, busy routines, anything that could fill the space you left behind. But even then, comparison showed up, quiet thoughts they may never say out loud, and each one led them back to you. All of this has been building under the surface, and now it is reaching the stage where it can no longer be pushed away so easily. At first they believed distance would make the connection weaker. They thought silence would reduce the intensity. They told themselves that if enough time passed, the memories would lose their power and your presence would slowly fade into the background of their life. But the opposite happened. The more time passed, the clearer everything became. Instead of forgetting you, they began noticing your absence in places they never expected, in the quiet minutes before sleep, in simple conversations that suddenly felt hollow, in crowded spaces where they still felt strangely alone. Even with noise all around them, some part of them kept returning to you. And that is where the deeper realization started. They began to understand that what they felt with you was not ordinary attachment. It was not just attraction. It was not a temporary rush. It was a rare connection that touched parts of them no one else had reached. That changed everything. Because once a person understands that something is rare, they stop being able to treat it like it is replaceable. The mind may still resist, the ego may still delay, but the heart starts speaking louder than both. There have been nights when they sat alone replaying small moments you may not even remember. A look, a conversation, the calm they felt around you, the way they did not have to act like someone else to be accepted. That kind of emotional safety is rare. Losing it leaves a space that is very hard to fill. At first, pride told them to keep moving as if nothing truly mattered. But pride cannot stand forever against emotional truth. Sooner or later, something deeper breaks through, and now it has. They no longer see this connection as optional. They are starting to understand that meeting you changed them in a lasting way, and once a person knows that, they cannot go back to what they were before. At the same time, something important has been changing inside you as well. Even if part of your heart still thinks of them, even if you still wonder what may happen next, you are not standing in the same emotional place anymore. This experience matured you. It taught you how painful it is to chase clarity from someone who is emotionally unavailable. It taught you what it feels like to carry a connection alone. It taught you what happens when you stretch yourself too far trying to keep something alive by yourself. And slowly, through the silence and the confusion, you started calling your energy back. That shift matters more than you realize, because the moment you stopped forcing outcomes, everything between you began to change. There was a time when your emotional state depended too much on them, on whether they answered, on whether they reached out, on whether they gave comfort. But eventually something inside you got tired of waiting, tired of overthinking, tired of carrying the full emotional weight alone. So you loosened your grip, not because you stopped caring, not because your heart became cold, but because your soul understood that your peace matters too. And that choice created a powerful shift. When someone is always emotionally available, their presence can sometimes be taken for granted without meaning to. But when that energy quietly pulls back and returns home to itself, the absence becomes impossible to ignore. That is what this person is feeling now. They feel your distance in a new way, because your energy no longer reaches for them with the same urgency. And instead of weakening the bond, it made them face what they were actually losing. That is why they have become more restless. Part of them feels that you are changing. Part of them knows the version of you who waited forever is disappearing. And that realization creates urgency. Real urgency. The strange thing about emotional truth is that it often arrives late. People sometimes understand the value of something only after they have lived without it long enough to feel the emptiness clearly. That lesson is rarely gentle. This person is now facing the emotional result of every delay, every avoided feeling, every moment when fear made the choice for them. And for the first time, they cannot escape those realizations as easily as before. There is another layer here that you need to understand. Sometimes separation is not meant to destroy a bond. Sometimes it happens to reveal everything inside both people that still needs healing. Distance makes emotional patterns visible. It shows where fear lives. It shows where insecurity hides. It shows where people leave themselves behind just to keep love alive. This time apart changed both of you in different ways. It pushed you to rediscover your worth without needing their validation, and it forced them to learn what life really feels like without your presence in it. That is why the energy feels heavier now. Something that used to stay hidden under avoidance is rising to the surface. This person is beginning to understand that they do not just miss your attention. They miss your energy, your warmth, your depth, your way of understanding things without judgment, your presence, even the version of themselves that only seemed to exist when they were with you. That realization is no longer small. It is no longer a passing feeling. It has become part of their daily thoughts. They can be doing something ordinary, and suddenly a song, a smell, a phrase, or even a certain hour of the day pulls them back to you with force. At first this frustrated them. They wanted to stay in control. But emotional truth does not follow rules made by fear. The deeper the connection, the more naturally it rises. And now they are reaching a point where resisting what they feel is more exhausting than admitting it. That is why the change inside them is speeding up. The walls they once used to protect themselves no longer feel safe. Those walls now feel like isolation. The silence that once seemed necessary now feels heavy. The distance they created does not bring peace anymore. It brings emptiness. And emptiness forces reflection. They have started looking back at your connection from a very different place. They remember your patience while they stayed guarded. They remember the care you offered while they answered with hesitation. They remember moments that seemed simple at the time, but now carry weight they cannot ignore. Real love often looks ordinary while it is present. It feels natural, quiet, safe. But once it is gone, people suddenly realize how rare that peace was. This person is beginning to understand that your presence gave them something they have struggled to find anywhere else. Not fantasy, not perfection, but honesty, depth, calm, a sense of being understood without always having to explain themselves. That kind of connection leaves a mark on the soul, and the more they search for it elsewhere, the more your importance becomes clear. There have been nights when they decided they were done, only to find their thoughts returning to you before the night ended. There have been moments when they tried to emotionally disconnect, only to feel even more pulled toward you afterward. It is almost as if every attempt to escape the connection makes it stronger in their awareness. That is because some bonds are not built only through attraction. They are built through recognition. Something in them recognized something in you. And once that kind of recognition happens, it is very hard to erase. Listen carefully here, because this part changes the whole picture. You are no longer in the same place either. You have started to understand that love should not cost you your peace. You have started to see that clarity matters. You have started to realize that your value does not become smaller just because someone else struggles to fully see it. That realization changed your energy, and whether they can explain it or not, they feel it. They feel that you are no longer emotionally chasing them in the old way. They feel that your energy is calmer now, stronger, more centered, less desperate for answers. And strangely, that is exactly what has made their emotional awareness of you grow even more. Because when someone stops trying to force love, and instead returns to themselves, their energy becomes powerful in a different way. You became still, and in that stillness, they were finally forced to hear their own feelings clearly. That is why the conflict inside them has become so intense. One part of them wants to reach toward you honestly. One part still fears vulnerability. One part wants certainty before taking any emotional risk. But another part knows that waiting longer may cost them something they cannot replace. That tension grows every day. Outwardly, they may still seem normal. Internally, there is constant movement. Their mind comes back to your connection again and again. Their emotions no longer let them sit comfortably inside denial, and the truth getting louder inside them is simple. You matter deeply to them, not on the surface, not for convenience, not for a short season. You matter in a way that changed their emotional world. That can be terrifying for someone who spent a long time trying to stay controlled, because once a person accepts how much someone means to them, they also have to face the risk of loss, vulnerability, and exposure. For a long time, fear made their choices. Fear of being hurt, fear of making the wrong move, fear of losing control, fear of opening too much. But fear has a limit. At some point, the pain of avoiding truth becomes heavier than the fear of speaking it. And that is the stage they are getting closer to now. Stay with me, because the silence is no longer empty. It is becoming loud inside them. Every day they stay disconnected, the pressure grows. Every time they try to suppress the connection, they feel it more clearly. And that is why you have been sensing stronger shifts lately. Something inside them is preparing for change, not forced change, not impulsive action, real recognition, the kind that changes how a person sees everything. They are beginning to understand that losing you would not simply feel like losing a person, it would feel like losing a part of themselves they only discovered through this bond. That realization changes people in a deep way. Whether they fully show it yet or not, their heart is moving closer to a moment where silence no longer feels possible. The more they try to create emotional distance, the more obvious your absence becomes. That has created a strange contradiction inside them. They want to protect themselves from vulnerability, yet they cannot stop thinking about reconnecting with you. They play out scenarios in their mind. What if they reach out? Would you answer? Would you still care? Would you turn away? Has too much time passed? These questions circle through them again and again. There are moments when they almost contact you, moments when they type a message, stare at your name, imagine your voice, then pull back at the last second because fear steps in again. But fear is weaker now than it used to be, not all at once, not dramatically, slowly, daily, little by little. At the same time, something steady and beautiful is happening inside you. The attachment that once made you anxious is turning into awareness. You are learning the difference between chasing an answer and letting truth reveal itself. You are no longer shrinking yourself while waiting for someone else to choose you. You are returning to yourself. And that, strangely enough, is exactly what has made this pull between you stronger. Because real energy becomes magnetic when it is no longer desperate. They can feel that you are not trapped in waiting anymore. You are becoming grounded, peaceful, whole in a way they did not fully notice before. And that brings both fear and admiration into their heart at the same time. Fear because they now understand they could truly lose you. Admiration because they see strength in you that perhaps they once overlooked. That is why this connection feels so intense right now. Two inner changes are happening at once. You are learning to stand in your own worth without depending on outside validation. And they are learning what life feels like when the person who truly saw them is no longer endlessly reaching for them. That mix creates emotional clarity. There is something even deeper happening under all of this. The connection is moving away from illusion and toward truth. Before, there may have been confusion, mixed signals, emotional imbalance, fear-based reactions, and too much avoidance. But now something more honest is trying to rise. They cannot comfortably hide from their feelings anymore, and you cannot comfortably abandon yourself to keep the bond alive on your own. That changes everything. The old version of this connection cannot continue. Only something more truthful can move forward from here. You may have noticed strange moments lately when their energy feels suddenly close. Times when they enter your thoughts with unusual force. Moments when a wave of feeling seems to appear from nowhere. This happens because emotional focus creates movement. The more deeply they think about you, the more strongly you feel that pull intuitively. And right now their focus has become intense. They are reflecting deeply, questioning deeply, feeling deeply. The version of them that tried to stay detached is beginning to fall apart, because down inside they already know something important. No one else has touched them the way you did. No one else created the same depth, the same recognition, the same sense of being fully seen. That awareness has changed the way they look at this entire connection. What once felt uncertain now feels deeply important. What they once avoided now feels impossible to fully escape. What they once doubted now feels clearer every day. And clarity always creates movement, not overnight, not in perfect form, but movement all the same. There are still fears they must face, There are still patterns they must understand. There are still truths they must fully accept. But something essential has already changed. They are no longer emotionally asleep to this connection. They feel it now, fully, and once a person reaches that stage, silence becomes much harder to maintain. You are reaching a new stage too. You are beginning to understand that your peace matters more than uncertainty, that your worth does not disappear inside someone else's confusion, that love should not ask you to suffer endlessly just to prove it is real. This understanding is making you stronger, not colder, not closed, just stronger. And strength rooted in self-respect changes everything, because now, whatever happens next, you are no longer losing yourself in the process. That is why the connection feels different from before. Both of you have changed. The old imbalance cannot keep going in the same way. Something more honest is trying to come through the silence, the reflection, and the emotional pressure. Very soon something will have to give, because emotional truth can stay buried only for so long before it asks to be spoken. And that is where this is heading. Something inside them has reached the point where suppressing these feelings no longer feels sustainable. The silence that once protected them has started to work against them. The distance they created to avoid vulnerability now feels heavier than vulnerability itself. This is the final stage before change. For so long, they believed avoidance would keep them safe. They believed if they stayed guarded long enough, the connection would fade on its own. But every attempt to disconnect only showed them how deeply rooted this bond really is. Now they are standing in front of a truth they cannot easily run from. You changed them, not for a moment, not on the surface, but in a lasting way. And once someone realizes that another person changed the way they experience love, emotion, and even themselves, life cannot continue in the old way. This has created a deep awakening inside them. They are beginning to see that peace never came from running. It comes from honesty, the very thing they resisted for so long. There are moments now when they feel very close to reaching out, moments when the pressure inside becomes so strong that silence almost breaks. They imagine the conversation, they imagine what they would say if fear was no longer in charge, and slowly, fear is losing its hold, because there comes a point where losing someone becomes more frightening than opening your heart. That is the point they are nearing now. But hear this clearly, because this matters just as much as anything happening in them. Your transformation matters too. You are not the same person who waited endlessly for reassurance. You are not the same person who abandoned your own emotional well-being, trying to keep everything alive alone. You are not the same person who measured your worth through someone else's confusion. You have grown through this pain. You have learned how to hold love in your heart without disappearing inside it. You have learned that silence does not decide your value. You have learned that real love should not leave you questioning your worth again and again. Because of that, your energy is calmer now, wiser, more powerful. That is why this bond feels so different. The old dynamic is ending. The version built on imbalance, uncertainty, fear, and emotional chasing cannot survive anymore. Something more honest is trying to take its place. Whether this person steps forward very soon or takes a little more time, one thing is already true. This connection changed both of you forever. It forced self-awareness, it forced healing, it forced emotional growth, and those changes are real. So if you have been feeling this pull, trust yourself. If your intuition says something is shifting, listen. If your heart senses movement under the silence, you are not imagining it. No matter what happens next, remember this above all else. Do not lose yourself waiting for someone else to fully wake up to their feelings. Keep choosing your peace. Keep building your life. Keep honoring your worth. Keep becoming the most grounded version of yourself. Because the deepest lesson here was never only about whether someone comes back. It was about you finally seeing your own value so clearly that no silence could erase it. That is the real change, and in a strange way, that change is exactly what helped create this energetic shift. The moment you stopped chasing outside of yourself, the connection started changing inside of them. The moment you returned to yourself, they began to understand what your absence truly meant. That is why everything feels different now. This is no longer only about confusion, it is about clarity. The truth inside them has grown too strong to ignore, and the truth inside you has grown too strong to abandon. Two people are standing near emotional honesty at the same time. One is learning to face what they feel. The other is learning to protect peace without closing the heart. That changes everything. So trust what you have been sensing. Trust the quiet pull. Trust the movement beneath the stillness. Something real is happening, but even more important, something real is happening inside you. You are becoming whole, not because someone finally chooses you, not because every answer arrives at once, not because silence suddenly disappears. You are becoming whole because you finally stopped leaving yourself behind in the process of loving someone else. And that kind of healing changes your life far beyond this one connection. So keep your heart open, but keep your feet under you. Keep your hope soft, but keep your self-respect strong. What is meant to be true will reveal itself, and what is real will not need you to destroy your peace to hold on to it. Sometimes the silence before reunion is not empty at all. Sometimes it is the exact space where both hearts are being changed the most.